The month is flying by and it's time for the July garden tour. Now the word for the month of July is weeds. The garden is growing like a weed and so are the weeds. Let's check it out. Hey friends, it's Barbara Sue at Kowalski Mountain and welcome back to the homestead. The month of July has been busy. Let me tell you, I have been so busy preserving and all the things garden that I'm having a really hard time keeping up with content. But I'm finally getting it back into a manageable amount, and so I thought we'd go ahead and take our July garden tour. Now right now I am in the tomato production garden, and that's the primary crop that's in this garden. Now we have 4, and this space primarily tomatoes. Now if you remember, we just moved to our off-grid homestead, and one of the things that we don't have set up yet is irrigation. And the month... that scared me. It started turning and it scared me. Now back to what I was saying. If you remember, we just moved here in September, and one of the things that we don't have set up yet is irrigation in the garden. And we've had a really hot and dry summer, and the garden is definitely taking a toll for it. We have actually watered a little bit. Philip pumps water from our creek, and he uses a fire hose and he waters the garden, but that happens periodically. I won't even say weekly. It happens when the garden gets the driest. So we're definitely seeing a loss in production from not watering. Now another weakness that we're having is we didn't fertilize, and you're going to see some of the things in the garden, they're definitely showing lack of fertilization. Now the tomatoes I have fertilized. I have been using a fish fertilizer on the tomatoes and the peppers, and they are really starting to bolster, and we're starting to see some more regular production. Let's check out these rows. Hornworms also found my garden. Now this particular tomato and plant, I never found the hornworm. I have searched relentlessly for him so I could squish him, and I never found him. Now I don't see any more damage, so I guess he probably went into a cocoon. Now I did find other hornworms in the garden, which I promptly squished. We're also having some trouble with stink bugs in the garden, and they drive me insane because all they do is puncture the skins of the tomatoes, and then they go bad quickly, and it's very, very frustrating. So I try to pick things as soon as they blush. I caught a stink bug, which I squish. I do not like stink bugs in my garden. And I'm hoping that disgusting stink bug smell is a warning to the other stink bugs to run away. Well, only a few tomatoes today. I have 4. But I've already made a batch of salsa, and I think I made 7 jars of salsa, and the most exciting thing was that everything in it was grown here in the garden. The garlic, the onions, the peppers, and the tomatoes all grown right here at Kowalski Mountain. Now one thing that I've been putting off harvesting are the hot peppers, and that's because I don't like them. But Philip does. And so he is at the grocery store right now, and he's bringing home some stuff to make some jalapeno poppers. So I'm going to go ahead and pick some hot peppers for him. one rotted. I hate when that happens. Now I picked a few of the green peppers last night actually, so that we could have cheesy stuffed venison peppers, and they were delicious. It was so good, and I love having the fresh peppers. Now here in the production garden, we are seeing the effects of the weeds much worse. This is a wild garden, so if you have a wild garden as well, I hope that I can make you feel better that even though this is wild, and even though we aren't watering it, we're still harvesting food. And maybe not as much as we would have if we were doing those other two things, but we're still harvesting food. And this is our first summer here, and there's a lot of things that need to be put into place still. So you know what? We're gonna get there, but not this year. Here's a quick look back over the month of July to see what we've harvested from the production garden. Now pretty much everything else in the garden has really succumbed to the weeds. The squash is not doing anything. The carrots are. I actually pulled some carrots and we had some with a meal this week. They're still kind of small, so I haven't pulled them. Now Philip told me the garden, it's been so dry, so we're really struggling with water down here. And he tells me, he says, your weeds are taking all the water from the garden. Well, those weeds are wildflowers. And I told him, I don't care. He's going to have to figure out a different solution because I'm not cutting down all the wildflowers. I want you to see this. Now that purple is called wild bergamot. And the butterflies absolutely love it. It's always covered with butterflies and all kinds of pollinators. I see the hummingbird moths. I don't know what the little yellow flowers are. Now this right here is the milkweed, and that's going to seed. So we're going to be able to see some seed from that pretty soon. Every season, this area is just filled with wildflowers. It's just gorgeous, and I love it. So he's going to have to find another solution of how to get water in this garden. Now these are our thornless blackberries, and they're really just coming in. The wild blackberries are all gone. Get a few here that are close, but not quite. Now this is the big cornfield that we planted for the cows. And it is desperately showing that it needed fertilization. You know, in hindsight, I got to thinking that before we purchased this piece of property, they used to plant soybean on it. So it definitely makes sense that the soil was depleted. And in hindsight, we really missed the mark. and didn't fertilize it. Now this will not go to waste. There is still corn growing here, believe it or not, and the stalks and this corn will still feed our cows. So our Amish neighbor who planted this for us, his corn is gorgeous. It's probably taller than me. It's this deep, dark, beautiful green. It looks amazing. He has the equipment to go in and weed it. And he fertilized it. And so we're definitely going to learn from this year of trial and error, and next year will be better. Now there's a butterfly. That might be a monarch. I'm not sure. Let's look. It's going to be camera shy. It's beautiful. Let me show you some corn. I'd say the deer have been in here. Now when we realized that we really needed to get some fertilizer in this field, we were actually going to do it. But we've made a new friend, and he is very knowledgeable about gardening, and he advised us that since the corn has already tasseled, that we just need to cut our losses. We are still going to get animal feed from this field. Maybe not as much as we wanted, but we're still going to get some. But to fertilize a field of this size was going to cost about $250. And our friend advised us that really it was too late. That while it might help some, it's not going to make a huge difference in our yield. And so we're just going to cut our losses this year. We're going to call it a lesson learned. And next year we're going to do better. It's not as beautiful as all the corn I see everywhere else, but I still love seeing it. It's still inspiring. You know, we're not there yet, but we're on our way, and we're going to get there, and I'm not discouraged about it. Frustrated, yes, but not discouraged. Next year will be better. Here in the compost, everything is a volunteer, but it's growing amazing. This is a little cherry tomato, and they look like the ones I buy in the grocery store. They're not the cherub ones, they're a little bit longer. And it's covered with tomatoes, but none of them, oops, spiderweb, but none of them are ready yet. Now on the back side, there is a butternut squash that is doing amazing. We've already gotten like a dozen squash off of it, and it's still producing. Now this squash is really starting to die back. But we're still getting, oh, there's some red tomatoes here. We're still getting squash. Now this is the animal production garden, and we have cantaloupes, which are not for the animals, and pumpkins, which some of them are for the animals. I have some happy pigs. I have spent a ton of time in here this month fighting the squash bugs. I've been picking off the eggs and killing the bugs, and I've kind of given up. But we do have some pumpkin. Now these are sugar pumpkins. They're sweet pumpkins for baking. Let's see, 4. We've already picked one. Now the melons are doing really good. Now Philip's been down here. Oops. Philip's been down here weeding. You can see the effects of his work. The nice thing about the melons is that they've been coming in kind of slow, so we can eat them before the next one comes in. Now while I'm here, let's go look at this. This has not gone good. This is where we planted the beets and the Trombensino squash. That was all for animals. And last I knew there was one squash out here. One. Still trying though. It's still blooming. It's still trying. Oh. Yeah, that one little squash, it's not going to do anything. It's not growing. Trombensino squash get to be about 3 feet long. That's not gonna do anything. And I don't even see any beets anymore. Now we do think that we're going to move the bulk of the garden up here to this field. For one, it'll be a lot closer to the house. And maybe minimize some of the space we have. I was afraid we were biting off more than we could chew. Now these right here are peanuts. The peanuts up front did not do anything. But we do have peanuts in a couple different places on the farm. I mean, look at all these melons. There's so many. Ooh, I forgot. Oh, that's one of those leaf bugs. Oh man, he got away. Oh, they're related to the stink bug, and they ruin the fruit. This tomato was in our starts that we got the melons from, and somebody misplanted it, but it's growing. Hi, pigs. Man, you guys, you are loving that rain that we got. And you guys stink. That stinks. We got a ton of rain the other day, so they got themselves a nice little wallow. Hi, pigs. Now the July garden it's probably going to be wrapping up pretty soon. We're going to come to the end of what we're going to harvest here in August for sure. But in July, we're going to go ahead and start the fall garden. So right now I'm going to get some compost so I can do some seed starts. This is some gorgeous compost. Now I got it from the back side of the compost pile because Philip's kind of been working the front and there might be some manure there that could burn the plants, but this back side near the squash and tomatoes, we haven't been dumping near that. So this is going to be safe for my plants. The last thing I'm going to do today is start some seeds for the fall garden. Now, if you remember from earlier this year, we used the viral seed starting method of seed snails, and I loved it. Now, I did an entire post on my blog all about seed snails, and you can see that right up here and also down in the description box. And I have a free planting guide that you can download for free when you join my newsletter. Now, I did a couple videos on seed snails. I did one about how to do them, and then I did a review video about what I thought about them. So I'm going to be sure to put those right up here as well, so you can watch those videos. Now, one thing I did learn is I need to label my seed snails better. So I'm planting some broccoli. Have 2 C's. It does, 2 C's. And I am planting some kale, and that's for the cows. And this is another variety of kale. This is called Black Magic. Now the other reason I want to use these labels instead of just writing on the seed snails is because these can go in the ground when I plant them, and then I'm more likely to mark what's in the ground. A weakness. And I'm going to plant some lettuce, salad lettuce. And I'm going to plant some iceberg. We have not been super happy with a lot of the different varieties of lettuce that we've planted. They all seem bitter. So I'm going to stick with some iceberg and see how that does. Now I am recycling all of the material I used for my seed snails. So I made seed snails out of grain sacks because we have a ton of it and I'm able to recycle all of it. So that is a great use of materials. I don't have to recut it. I can just go straight to planting. And I need a trowel. Now I already mixed up my mix and this compost looks amazing. It's so dark and beautiful. And there's my seed snail. Now I used the same saturation level for the soil. I did a 3-to-1 soil to water, but this compost seems much more wet than using like the potting soil I bought from the store. Alright, we're just going to push these down. Now these only have to be down like a 1/4 inch, so I'm just going to do that with my finger. Alrighty, into it goes. And there we go. It's the first seed snail for the 2024 fall garden. Well friends, as always, we really appreciate you watching. I hope you've enjoyed seeing my wild garden, because even though it's not perfect, we're still producing food, and that's what's most important. Now, this year was definitely a learning curve, but next year it's going to be even better. Thanks so much for watching. We really appreciate it. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, what are you waiting for? Hit that button. We'd love you to be a part of the Kowalski Mountain family. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.